What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr War Games, and yes, I am back with another darkworld deck. This time it is an update with 0 dangers. That's right, we have completely removed that factor of RNG from the deck. Now, as a disclaimer, when you're putting this deck together, note that by taking out the dangers, you do make it weaker in consistency. However, you do minimize the RNG factor of will it work, won't it work? So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. If you get this video above 50 likes in the first 24 hours, I will bring you a synchro version of Dark Worlds as well. So with all of that out of the way, I'm going to dive headfirst into the profile and then explain the changes of the dangers. So just so you can visually see, these are the danger cards that I've taken out, and of course Zephyros the Elite, because technically, without the dangers in there, there's no real need for Zephyros the Elite. So straight away, that's decently 8 cards that's come out of the main deck, and in those 8 spaces, that's when you're going to be putting in other cards in order to maintain and control the same effect that these will give you. So we're going to blitz through the standard lineup of triple rainbow, triple snow, triple genta, you know, seen this 110 times before, and Grapha, okay? Every list should 99.999% of the time be the same with this lineup. You're either playing 2 Grapha, 3 Grapha. Now, where it changes. So for the first change, I am playing double beige and double brow. Now the reason I've gone with 2 and 2 is that the card that you are using to replace the danger effect in the deck, you kind of want to make sure that when you're discarding cards, you're getting maximum value off the back of it. Not to mention that with the Salamander Catalyzer, discarding itself with beige, or discarding beige off the back of it, gives you instant access to a rank 4. So that can be a very direct route to a Baguska if that control will get you the game win and play you under something like a Shifter or a Droll. Not so much under a Shifter actually, because your beige is banished, but the idea is that under a Droll or a complete lockout, you're able to still play. Your more direct route would be going into the Daguerres. And by getting into Daguerres, you'll give that ability, or Daguerres, sorry, to give you the draws. And then that's the point where you'll put yourself into Droll territory. The one thing you got to keep in mind with a deck like this is that you're trying to play around Droll, which means the first thing you want to do is you don't want to go, okay, activate Genta, because as soon as you add Gates of the Dark World, if they've got Droll, they will Droll you. You want to be playing cards that will enable you to play through a Droll, which is why we play beige, and it's also why we play cards like Cheerful Coffin, which is basically the replacement for the dangers, which will allow you to discard the cards and then build your chain order. And the best thing about that, in comparison to something like a card destruction or anything else, is as soon as you activate a card destruction and you replace the hand, if your opponent has drawn into a draw on Lockbird, you could build your chain up on the graveyard and go, for example, Chainlink 1 Brow, Chainlink 2 Rainbow, Chainlink 3 Snow. They could then go Chainlink 4 Droll, and your entire build-up is completely gone. Whereas if you're using something like Cheerful Coffin and you would discard Brow, Snow, and Rainbow, you get to go Chainlink 1, 2, 3, resolve all of those, and then you'll get hit with a Droll. So you'll still be able to gain back the advantage of what you've discarded, and you would have set up a Rainbow in the graveyard, you would have set up a Snow in the graveyard, and that's when you can start using stuff like Muckraker to bring back the Ceruli to complete a hand loop. And for those of you that are unaware of that, off of Muckraker, when you discard a card and bring back Ceruli, it actually triggers to make your opponent discard a card. So if they're already down by 4 cards, that's how you can complete the hand loop as well. I'm still maintaining the 1 gold and the 1 silver. Now this is just personal preference, okay? So the way that I see this is, if I'm going first, silver is my go-to. I'm always going to go to silver off of the back of rainbow and everything else that I need. Not only is it a free body on the board that can help me link climb, and considering you're going to need that more times than not now that you're not playing as many dangers, but it gives you that ability to not only hand rip, but it also gives you that ability to build the board. On the flip side, I do like going for gold as well, because when you do look at the other ones, yes, of course, Lucian can give you an additional monster on the board, or it can give you a monster to your opponent's side of the board. But what I like about gold is, yes, it will constantly keep floating itself back, but on top of that as well, it can be a very good board breaking option. Especially if you're able to set up like a decent chain where you can go Chainlink 1 gold and then Chainlink 2 something else. Gold then gives you the ability to deal with at least 2 back row or 2 front row, and that can very easily try and bait out or pull out any of the Omni Negates your opponent would have already rebuilt. It's just personal preference. If you don't like gold, by all means you don't need to play it. I wouldn't personally like to see 2 silver for the pure fact you can never guarantee you're going first. And that's just kind of the kind of approach that I've taken with this deck. It's like, right, if I go first, I've got a direct route to a silver. If I go second, I've got a direct route to a gold. Still playing the one Ceruli. Personally, I feel one is enough. I definitely want to be playing 2 Dark Corridor. I still currently only own 1, which is why I'm only playing 1 Dark Corridor, but I definitely want to be playing it at 2. And the reason for that is there's just so many more consistent ways to get Ceruli to the graveyard and guarantee it. So that's the flip side of when you're playing this build in opposed to the Danger build. The Danger build is all RNG factor. There is no time that you can guarantee exactly what danger you are going to discard off of a danger reveal and the exact dark world you're going to want to get rid of as well. Whereas with all the cards in here that we do play in replacement, bar 1, which is dragged down to the grave where you give your opponent the choice to choose what they want to discard, you will be able to control exactly what you discard at the exact time. So, speaking of danger replacements, we do go with 2 Salamander Catalyzer. Now, you can play this at 3 to increase the consistency. The only issue is it's not a dark, so it doesn't have that allure capabilities if you wanted to use allure in the deck. But what it does do is it is a controlled danger. You are able to use itself to discard any of your Dark World monsters and then either trigger the Dark World's effect or just get that Dark World onto the board because you might want to use it as a free extender. As I've already said in the example of Beige, this plus Beige is an instant rank 4 play or a link 2 play should you want it, and it really depends on what else you're trying to achieve. If you opened up, for example, Ceruli, Catalyzer and Silver, well, very easy, you can go Catalyzer, discard the Ceruli. Ceruli goes to your opponent's board, Silver rips 1 from your opponent's hand, 2 from your opponent's hand, sorry. Silver comes back, link 2 into Akashic. Akashic can then bounce the Ceruli back to the hand, and then you're trying to kind of regain that resource from that point on. So really do like Catalyzer. Again, like I said, 3 is good if you want to, but the issue is it's a hard once per turn. So if it does get stopped, it's kind of a bit of a downer. Sorry, not if it gets stopped. If you've already used 1, it is a bit of a downer. But then, like I've said, you are controlling your board state and the cards that you are utilising. The last one I've got is I still play the 1 Diabolical. I still really like this card. I'm only playing 1 of it. Yes, it's not as consistent to get it to the graveyard in a sense that, you know, off of the dangers, you're going, okay, discard, draw, discard, draw. Whereas with all of these other cards, you're pretty much going, okay, just discard or just draw. So you're trying to get the balance of best of both. But the fact that this can summon itself from the hand or grave is really powerful. It's a very nice boss monster on the board as like a 2300. But then it's also very easy link fodder or XYZ fodder should you want to play more rank 8s in the deck. And then for my normal summon engine, so I've kind of gone with the 1 Phantom Skyblaster. You don't have to play this at all if you want to. This is just an example, so I'm not actually including this in the list because my other normal summon of the deck is a little bit more prominent. But this is a card that if you're not worried about dangers, you could very easily play the Skyblaster. It does dictate your extra deck a little bit more, but it does give you a bit more consistency that off of basically the back of a Phantom Skyblaster, you can link climb into a Saruja very easily, but it then means you need to play like stuff like Link Spider and everything else. So that is an option for your normal summon. You've also got stuff like Armageddon Knight, you can play Roto, you've got Dark Grepher, you've got Fairy Tale Luna. Like, I've shown you so many different normal summon options for the decks. You've got your Tour Guide as well. But the one that I decided to go for with this version is I wanted to go back to the Illusion engine. And I think the Illusion engine is quite hype right now. And the way that I've kind of changed this around is I've gone with 3 Mirror Knight instead and 2 Cornfield. And the reason I've gone with the 2 and the 3 rather than the 3 and the 2 is because, again, I'm taking into account this deck trying to play a round roll. Now, obviously, that might be a factor for game 2 rather than game 1, but this kind of gives you an option to look at. So obviously the ideal way is you want 3 and then lower Mirror Knights because the Mirror Knight is only your normal summon to then quick effect tag out, whereas the Kotal can be a great deck thing capabilities. The issue is that you kind of want to play one of these ones that when you're activating something like Card Destruction, or if you're activating something along the lines more so with Dark World Dealings and Drag Down to the Grave, that whatever you're discarding, you're able to gain a bit of advantage off the back of it as well. So it really does come down to personal preference. As you'll see that this is like a 6-card engine, well, a 7-card engine when you include Chimera Fusion. But what I do like about it is the fact that it can give me a double form of interruption. It lets me play around stuff like Dark World and no more. The chances are if your opponent doesn't respond and you can complete the hand loop combo, it doesn't matter what you end your board on, there's no way they're winning that game. But what I like about this is it's a new engine that not a lot of people are familiar with. It gives you graveyard protection in the form of the Cornfield and Mirror Sword Graveyard's abilities. It gives you the ability to recycle the Chimera Fusion. It's more ways of getting into your Grepher Fusion, and it's also more ways of opening up the extra deck. Where you're not going to be able to flood the board with as many dangers, it does allow you to get into more cards that can control your opponent's hand state, also allow you to kind of play better boards, use up your Dark Worlds as fusion material, and everything else in between. I've shown you so many different versions of Dark Worlds that it really does come down to personal preference. If you don't like this engine and you want to go for more normal summons, like I said, you've got Luna, you've got Tour Guide, you can go Lava Golem if you want to as well. Really is open booked for what you want to play with. Moving on to the spells, of course, we are going with triple drag down. So this is obviously our out to droll. So you want to activate this. It's obviously going to be risky because at the end of the day, if your opponent draws that droll, it's still going to suck. But you're activating drag down to the grave. You get advantage of your opponent's hand. The only real risk that you take with playing this card is you kind of then want to, like, you never want to activate this with cards that you don't want in the graveyard. For example, like if I activate this because I'm so worried about drawing Lotbird and I've got one Mirror Knight in the hand, and that's the card they're going to want to discard, then you don't really want to activate. You probably take that droll risk and go, okay, cool, Mirror Knight, normal summon, tag out, go into the Chimera, Chimera gets you your Chimera Fusion, and then go, okay, cool, droll. And you'll probably take that hit. So it really does come down to, you know, personal preference, what you want to use. There are obviously other alternatives that are a little bit better than this. When you're looking at stuff like Triple Tactics Frost, Triple Tactics Talents, I'm not playing them in this build. I've actually tried to keep it as cheap as I possibly can for you guys as well. So if you're not playing Dangers, you're taking away the RNG factor, and then trying to keep it cheap as well also gives you that budget option. Then for the spice, and that is Cheerful Coffin. Now, not a lot of people like this, completely up to them. I don't mind, but obviously I'm not going to choose. If someone says to me, here, you can have a full danger deck or you can have Cheerful Coffin, I'm obviously going to choose the dangers more times than not. That being said, Cheerful Coffin is one of those best alternatives if you don't have dangers or you don't want to play them because of the RNG factor. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with Cheerful Coffin, what it does is it allows you to discard up to 3 monster cards from your hand to the graveyard as effect. So if you activate this, there's not really anything your opponent can stop. The one benefit of something like this, as I mentioned earlier, is the fact that it doesn't draw you cards instantly like card destruction. It gives you that ability to discard your cards, build your chain link, resolve that chain link, and then they control you. So you still get some form of advantage from it. It's up to 3 monster cards. You don't need to have all 3 in the hand. That is one other thing to keep in mind as well, which is why it gives you a little bit of flexibility. Yes, if you just discard 1 card, you're not going to get as much advantage. But like I said, this is your best and closest replacement if you don't want to be playing Dangers. Carrying on, we are playing at 2 Dark World Dealings. Now, this is obviously always going to be a bit risky. You probably always want to go with Drag Down first because it gives you that hand knowledge bar 1 card. Whereas Dark World Dealings, obviously each player draws a card and then each player discards a card. So again, quite like this can run head first into a draw because each player will draw a card, then you'll discard the card, and then on a new chain, you might want to go, okay, cool, chain link 1, attempt to use the effect, and they can go chain link 2, draw. Which is why I'm only playing it at 2, not at 3. There's obviously more of a risk with the drag down, but at least drag down, you get the full knowledge, and if they do top deck a draw, so be it. That's just the way of the luck of the draw. Card Destruction, obviously insanely powerful in this deck, unless you're facing tier elements. Dark Corridor would 100% be playing this at 2. Like I said, I don't own a second, so that's where you can bump it up to 42 cards. I've then got 2 gates and then the 1 archives and the 1 accession. This is just, again, personal preference. It's the way I prefer to play the deck. I know people want to play 3 gates. You're more than welcome to do so. The way I saw it was, like, with no dangers in the graveyard or no fiends in the graveyard to utilize the draw off of gates, it's all useless and all dead to me. So it's completely pointless, which is rather see my Genta, than I would my gates. And that's just the way I play the deck. A lot of people play it differently. It really is entirely up to you. So now let's move on to the extra deck. So the extra deck, again, is pretty standard for the lineup of Dark Worlds, but then we do have a couple of little bits of spice as well. So with the extra deck, pretty straightforward and simple on this one. Always playing 2 Grepher. I don't think you need 3. I think 2 is more than enough. Because we are playing the Chimera engine, I've cut this down so that we're only playing the 1 Chimera, the King of Phantom Beast, and the Guardian Chimera. Draws, pops, happy days, and then obviously you need to get this on the board first in order to loop your opponent for 1 card or hand rip them for a card, and then obviously have the ability to trigger all of your graveyard effects of your illusion monsters. For the XYZs, we've got the 1 Daguerres, we've got the 1 Baguska, pretty straightforward and simple on those as well. And then the links are always pretty standard with the Akashic, IP, Cross Sheep, Muckraker, Unicorn, Zalantis, Appaloosa, Saruja, and of course, Underworld Goddess. You can adapt it, make the extra deck your own, change it to however you see fit and what you want to go for. If you want to, like I said, you can put in Phantom Skyblaster. You'll need to put in stuff like a Link Karibo in order to kind of Link climb higher and get into your Saruja easier. But the idea behind this is, obviously, Saruja is, you'll make it if you're not under Droll. You'll know if you're under Droll way before you get to Saruja, and it's a nice way of extending your hand that little bit further. You can add in stuff like Access Code Talker. You can play more fusions. So you can put in stuff like Dracus Depelia. You can put in the triple-headed Predaplant monster if you wanted to. That gives you flexibility when you're playing the Illusion engine, as I showed you in the previous Dark World Danger Illusion build as well. This is what I love about Dark World so much, is the pure flexibility of the deck. Yes, the strategy is relatively similar in the fact that they want to go first, they want to hand loop you. They want to go second, they want to OTK you. But the way you build the deck is all down to personal preference, and it has a lot of creative options, which is why I think it's really, really cool. As you've seen previously, I've been able to do so many different versions of this deck. So that's what's really good about the deck, is the pure flexibility, everything else that it can do. Like I've shown you many times before, you've got so many different variants, so many different options. There's loads for you to see, and it really comes down to adapting it to your environment, maintaining its overall goal of being able to hand loop, but also maintaining its go second option to be able to consistently OTK and play through whatever it can. It's obviously going to be tougher when formats have Shifter running around and when they have Draw and Lockbird running around, as they are probably the biggest weaknesses for the deck like this. Obviously, you can go a more fusion route and play stuff like Super Poly if you wanted to, but that then relies on what your opponent plays to get you the most advantage. Whereas this, you're pretty much saying, okay, I don't mind what you're playing, as long as you're not playing tier elements, we're good to rock and roll. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions, by all means, please put them in the comments down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. Also, make sure you get this video above 50 likes in the first 24 hours, and I will bring you a synchro version of the deck, which is also incredibly fun and does give you another direct route to play the deck if you wanted to spice it up a little bit as well. With all of that out of the way, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.